Hello everyone, George DeSantis here with the look at the market for the week ending May 12th, 2017. As usual, before we begin to discuss charts, let's look at the disclaimer. Trading and investing has large potential rewards and large potential risks. So this video presentation is designed for educational purposes only and is not a solicitation or advice to buy or sell any particular securities or other tradable instruments. You must be aware of the risks and be willing to accept them in order to invest in the markets. Consult a licensed professional investment advisor for investment advice, since I am not one. We'll begin to look at some charts, but we're going to use TC2000's charts this week since I'm having trouble downloading the data from the usual super charts. So let's begin by looking at some charts. We'll start by looking at the S&P, the weekly chart. Uh, Weekly chart, we make the strategic decisions as to whether we ought to be owning the particular security or the index and so on. So on the weekly chart, we can see that since we had this nice beginning of a nice uptrend here in November, we've had that uptrend with some consolidation here, another move up, consolidation here, another move up. Now, a big question is, of course, where do we go from here? We always want to know that. Well, we seem to be bumping up against this. We are bumping up against this 2400 level on the S&P. And with some consolidation here and perhaps some here, eventually we should go higher. That, I say that for a number of reasons. First of all, the momentum is still very strong. MACD is now trending up from below the zero line, and money flow, meaning the amount of buying pressure, is stronger than selling pressure. Selling pressure is indicated when the histogram is below zero. So the weekly chart is looking pretty good. Let's put it that way. We have a 4-period EMA, a 9-period EMA, and a 30 weighted moving average. This is a weekly chart, so it would be a 4-week, a 9-week, and a 30-week. Let's take a look at the daily chart of the S&P. On the daily chart, we can see that consolidation period reflected in this area here. And then we moved up again toward that 2400 level rather. And now we have a close within the buy zone between the 9 and the 30. And to the bottom of the chart, we can see these indicators looking pretty strong. Percent R with a 30 period is still above that 20% line here. MACD has trended down. There is no divergence though, no bearish divergence. And Shaikin money flow is continuing to be very positive. So we do have more buying pressure than selling pressure. Even as the market pulled back a bit, buying pressure was strong, which means the big money was accumulating stock while the soft money was selling, so to speak. Let's take a look at some individual stocks. So we look at Facebook. Again, let me quickly repeat that I can't really tell you what to buy, how much to buy, etc. Obviously, because I don't know your financial situation and your goals, etc. As we usually discuss. So we'll just look at some charts and for learning purposes. What do we see on Facebook's weekly chart? We see a crossover here of the 4-period exponential moving average across above the 9 exponential moving average, and then both of them crossing above the 30 weighted moving average. This is a pretty nice uptrend that we've had. We had a bit of a consolidation move here, fell into a bit of a buy zone between the 4 and the 9, and again we had a nice move up on Facebook. It seems to be consolidating here again, some dojis as candlestick patterns. So we still have a nice uptrend on Facebook. Williams percent R above 20%, that's pretty strong. MACD above zero, bulls are in charge. Shaikin money flow, still looking pretty good to me. A daily chart on Facebook, you can see that consolidation since it made this high at around 153. So we have had this bit of a consolidation here. It's now sitting around 150. The expectation, as far as I'm concerned, is that we're going to after this consolidation, we should go higher. You can see money flow here. Buying pressure is still there, even during the consolidation, as I mentioned on the weekly chart. And MACD pulled back, but no divergence. So nothing to be concerned about here, I don't think. Let's take a look at another stock. Here's a weekly chart of Berkshire Hathaway, the B shares. As I mentioned last time, I bought too soon. I bought on the way. I was buying on the way down, I thought, but we went even further down. So now we seem to be finding support around this level here, this 163 level. I hope that's so. It seems to be the case. I'll show you why on the daily chart. Williams percent R is now is continuing to be above 50%, so that's showing that momentum is still pretty strong. MACD histogram dropped below the zero line, so bears took over here, and we wait now to see how strong the bears are, or if we're going to start seeing an uptrend here on the MACD histogram. Let's take and Shaiken money flow became more negative here, but last week it seemed to have shortened up on the histogram. So maybe there's some buying and finding some support here, and there are people coming in here to buy the stock. Let's take a look at the daily chart. On the daily chart, you see we seem to be finding support at this level here, this 162, approximately 162 level. Now, if we look at MACD, we could see that there's a bullish divergence on the daily chart, because as we made this low, bears were this strong, and as we made this new low, bears were not as strong. So it seems to be a bullish divergence. Of course, I own a significant amount now, so I hope that we get a nice move here. We can see the money flow seems to be becoming more favorable. In other words, the buying pressure seems to, the selling pressure seems to be weakening here. All right, so we'll see how that works out. Let's take a look at another chart, another stock. Here's an ETF that I have owned for a while. Done pretty well for the year anyway, since it broke above, since these moving averages also broke above each other, you know, the 4 above the 9, etc. And it's the international stock ETF of the iShares group. And so if you want some international exposure, as I do, then this is something that I looked at, and I bought some of this. MACD is looking pretty good to me. It's trending up above the zero line, and money flow seems to be, there's some buying pressure here. So I own this one. The daily chart, if you want to look at that, similar kind of thing, we can see it looks pretty good. Let's take a look at something else. Here's an ETF that I mentioned last time. It was brought to my attention by a good friend, and I bought some small position. But what it is an ETF of, it's called the Innovator IBD 50 Fund. Now, if you get a hold of IBD at all, especially on a Friday, on a Saturday rather, you'll see that they do research and come up with 50 of the best growth stocks, and that has performed pretty well compared to the S&P. So, you know, it's an interesting one if one wants to be exposed to growth stocks, and you can see the trend looks pretty good here. This is a weekly chart. Let's take a look at, and the money flow is coming in here. It's showing a very positive money flow, I think. MACD is trending up, so it looks pretty good to me. I own a little bit. And here's a chart of Apple, a weekly chart, and we can see how we have this nice uptrend here. Since we saw, you remember, we saw those bullish divergences when Apple was trading around $93 a share. We saw some bullish divergences back at that back in here. Bullish. You can see MACD getting weaker, getting strong. The bears getting weaker and weaker here. And since that bullish divergence, there were two of them in succession. We had this nice uptrend. So that's one of my big winners. I continue to hold the options that my friend recommended to me, and it's in really nice shape. So we'll see how far this goes. On the daily chart, Apple is still Also, of course, on the daily chart, it will also look very good. Again, how far does this thing go? Look at the money flow coming in nicely here. I think most people miss the boat in thinking that Apple doesn't have anything to offer besides the iPhone, and perhaps they do. So that's Apple. Let's take a look at something else. Here's a weekly chart of Microsoft, and since July of 2016, we can see that nice uptrend. I think that's when they started showing very good results with their cloud services, etc. And you can see percentile crossed above 50, was off to the races, and it still looks pretty good. Let's take a look at the daily chart. The daily chart, you'll see what I mean. You see, on the daily chart, we had this steady climb, and then we had a nice bump up here. We consolidated. We fell right between the 9 and the 30, and that is the buy zone. So if anything, Microsoft should be a buy here. You can see the money, the buying pressure is strong. Look at this, right? Even though the market was consolidating, buying pressure was strong. So it appears that there's some good opportunity here. I mean, between the 9 and the 30 is usually a good buying opportunity. So let's take a look at something else. Another one of my favorites is Netflix. And here's a weekly chart. And we can see how strong this looks. Since November, this thing has been doing pretty well. And percent are way above the 20% line. That's strong. We do have a concern here about MACD perhaps giving us a bearish divergence. So we got to keep an eye on that. But I do like Netflix as a very long-term play because they are really uh, big overseas. They're growing overseas by leaps and bounds. Anyway, that's my story. I like Shaiken looking as though the buying pressure is increasing here. So that's another one that I like, Netflix that I have. And here's a weekly chart of Visa. The credit card companies, Visa and MasterCard, doing pretty well, both of them. I like Visa. I own this one, some. You can see that weekly chart for the year 2017. It looks pretty good. And we can see that the momentum is strong and there's buying pressure here, etc. So Visa is another one I like. Here's a weekly chart of Nvidia. Now, Nvidia had it was the best stock last year. Had the biggest move last year of any stock on the market, I believe. And then it went into some consolidation early part this year. But since Tesla is using their software, it seems as though we had this nice earning season, earning report, and of course we had this nice big jump here. So on the weekly chart, it looks pretty strong to me if this continues. And then Zacks reports that semiconductors are doing very well. So stocks like Applied Materials, let's take a look at it. Applied Materials on a weekly chart looks very strong. That's a semiconductor. They provide equipment for semiconductor manufacturers. And also a stock like Micron Technology. So semiconductors look strong. I'm going to look to see if I want to get back into any of these as we go along. Now, I was reading an article and this is very speculative, of course. I was reading an article in the recent issue of MIT Technology Review, and it's about a company that just went public recently. Let me put it up here. Um, it's called Jounce Therapeutics. Very, very speculative. It's one of those biotech companies, so I'm not saying we rush out and buy a whole load of it, okay? But it's speculative, and I like the concept. I was reading the article. It's very encouraging. Of course, a very difficult area of research. So this is one I just want to take a quick look at. This is a weekly chart. Let's see what the daily looks like. It's been up and down, but it's generally been moving up. So we'll keep a close eye on that one. We're coming to the end of the video here, so have a nice weekend. I hope you had a nice weekend. It's Sunday night now. Have a good week in trading, okay? We'll do this again next week. Have a good week.